Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2008, it's a Toyota Camry, and we're going to be changing all four struts all the way around. And the reason we're going to be changing these struts is because they are blown out, which actually then cause the tires on the car here to become all cupped. When you run your hand over the top of the tires, you can feel it's all cupped. So when you drive this car, you have a lot of noise coming from it. You'll have, as you're driving, you'll hear like a thump 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 noise because the tires are all cupped. So this particular car, we're going to change all four struts, and we're going to do all of the tires at the same time too. We are going to change what's called it's called a quick strut. We're going to change the entire assembly because the strut itself is no good. But up on top, there's a piece up there called this part up on the top right here is actually no good also. The bearing plate is no good. And right here, this boot on the bottom right here, this dust boot, it's destroyed. So it's less expensive to buy the entire strut assembly instead of buying the strut and then the boot kit and the bearing plate individually. So in this case, we're going to be changing all four of the struts, and we're going to do it with quick struts, which comes, as you can see, a complete assembly. So all right, let me get up there and we'll pull all the wheels off and let's get started. Okay, now this is looking at the left front. Before we get started, I just want to point out exactly what I'm going to do before I actually start on it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to spray this up with some penetrating oil because, as you can see, it's pretty rusty. We're hopefully going to be able to save the stabilizer links, but we'll see. This is I think this is a 6mm here, and that nut on the outside is a 17mm. This bolt over here, we're going to take this out to relocate the cables for the ABS, and also we're going to remove or relocate the brake hydraulic cable. We're going to take out this bolt here, as well as another bolt down inside there. I don't know if you can see it, but there's another bolt right down here. We're going to take that out also. We're going to air gun those two out, and then we're going to take these nuts here and we're going to tap them out. We're going to make sure that the axle doesn't pull out of the tripod in there. As you can see, that axle is in the transmission. We want to hold this rotor and hub assembly in so that we don't accidentally have that axle pull out of the transmission, because you'll be kicking yourself that you didn't take an extra minute to secure it up out of the way. What I'm going to do is you can either take a piece of wire and wire it up out of the way, or you'll see I'm going to use a bungee cord to hold it out of the way. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up underneath here, and those studs right there, we're going to take those studs out. I think they're 14mm. That holds the three of them, not the one in the center. We're just going to take out the ones around here. And this one here we're not going to take out, just the ones here and the other two. All right, we're going to take those out, and we're going to leave the center one on, and then we'll remove the strut from the car. All right, so without further ado, let's grab our air guns and let's get started. This is, by the way, one of the few jobs you're going to see me use air guns on. Most of the time I'll do everything by hand, but this one I'm going to use the impact. All right, so let's grab some tools and let's get started. Well, I'm hoping that this you're able to see okay. All right, remember what we talked about. First thing we're going to do is we're going to spray everything up with penetrating oil first. Makes it a lot easier coming off later on. All right, so first thing we're going to do, we're going to remove the line here, the brake line. We're just going to take that and relocate that off to the side. Don't lose this, you're going to need it. We'll pull this off like this. And we'll just leave this off to the side like that for now. This just pulls right off of here like this, so that's just free right now. We're going to take this off right here. We're going to try to air gun that nut off. I don't know if it's going to work. That's 17mm, just so you know. But we're going to give it a try, so cover your ears. Alright, not coming off. The whole thing is spinning now. All right, so what we're going to do is you put a wrench on here like this. You take that 6mm that we talked about. You put it in there, and then it's going to be a little bit rusty, just so you know. Maybe a little bit rusty. It could be a little bit of dirt in there, road debris. All right, and what we're going to do now, put a ratchet on this, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully we can save these without having to change them. Now, you're just going to hold that stud in the center, and we're going to rotate the wrench. We're not going to use the ratchet. We're going to use the wrench to get that nut off. The whole idea is to hold that 6mm in place so it doesn't move. And then we'll do the work on the outside with the 17mm. Now, if it gets pretty tight, you can stop and you can turn it back in. Again, you're just using the wrench. You're just holding the center. The reason I'm turning it back in is I'm going to put some anti-seize or never seize on there to make it come out a little bit easier. So you just put a little bit on the threads. And let's give it a try again. And this is where you got to be careful. You don't want to strip it by accident. Hope you can see that okay. I don't know if you can, but let's get some more light down in there. Okay, so we're able to get the stabilizer link off without destroying it. So just take that extra time to put that never seize or any kind of anti-seize on there, and you'll be able to hopefully save your link if it's not bad. Now this you're going to need again, so don't throw it away. Just relocate that to the side for now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here, we're going to shoot these two nuts off right here. I'm going to do the low one first. Notice I left the bolts in there. We're not taking them out yet. Take the nuts off. Now, the reason I'm saying to leave those bolts in there is because we have to secure this knuckle so it doesn't fall out and pull the tripod out. So you have your bungee cord or your wire now ready to bond to hold it up there. You're just going to push it and pull one at a time out, nice and gently. Now, if it's a little bit tight and you can't get the bolt to move, screw the nut back on. And what you do is just tap it like that to get it to move, and then take the nut back off. And then just push this in and out, and you can pull this out. You may have to lift up on the on the lower suspension. You see how I'm holding this in, right? And then we're just going to take it out of there very little, easily. And now we're just going to take our bungee cord and we're going to secure it back so it doesn't pull out of the transmission. See, any way you can secure that back in there, that's great. I'm going to go up top now. We're going to air gun those bolts up on the top off. I'm not going to bring you with me, so you have an idea of what I'm doing here. We're going to take them off. We took 2 of them totally off, and now we're just going to take the 3rd one partially off. And the reason we did that, we didn't want that thing falling out on our heads, all right? Now you can hold the strut up. You can hold the strut up and remove the nut from the top. And then we'll take the strut assembly out. And that's the strut. Now this boot here is in good shape, but I'll show you what the other boots look like when I take them out. And this strut was leaking actually too. All right, so now we're going to put the new one back in. Grab the new one and we'll come right back. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you this too. When you're putting the new strut back in, make sure you use the new nuts up on the top. You don't want to reuse the old nuts. So we're going to catch the top up there first. And now we'll catch the nuts up on top. Now we're not doing anything up on top yet, we're just going to leave it just the way it is. We're going to turn the strut to line everything up. And now we're going to reinstall this over here. I hope you can see. I'll try to get as much light in there as I can. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like you can see pretty good. Alright, now when you take your bungee cord off, be careful. You don't want the tripod to pop out. And we're just going to take this, push it back into here, and then we're going to lift it up and put your bolts back through that you previously took out. A lot of times you'll see me using my hip to pull this up. If you're on the ground, obviously you won't be able to. We're just going to catch everything on here first, and then we'll tighten it back up. We're going to use some more never sees on here. Take your time. It's always better to do something slow than to screw it up and then you wind up having to change additional parts. All right, so that we're going to screw on by hand. And once everything is caught by hand, then we'll go back and screw everything else back in there. All right, so now everything's caught by hand. We're going to tighten up those two nuts there first. We're going to tighten up the two nuts on the bottom right here first. And then you can shoot it on tight. Same thing here. Now obviously if you don't have an air gun, you will need to tighten it up by hand. If you need to know what the specs are, send me an email and I'll be more than happy to look it up for you. All right, we're going to tighten up the cable here that holds the brake line in place and holds the ABS out of the way. Nice and tight. We're going to reattach this piece here that we previously took off to hold the ABS sensor out of the way, and there's a little tiny hole right there and there that it connects into. Next thing we're going to do, put our wrench back on here. Put that 6mm back in, and now we're going to tighten up this bolt. I'm sorry, the nut, the 17mm nut. You're going to tighten that up. Now remember, you're turning the nut. You're just holding the centerpiece stationary, but you're actually turning the nut. All right, then we'll tighten this down pretty tight here. Again, if you need to, you let me know. I'll give you the torque specs on this. Now, once you get this down that far down, then you can pull this down and make sure it's tight. That won't go anywhere. All right, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go up top. We're going to air gun those nuts up on top. The ones up top were 14. They're now 15mm. So we're going to air gun them back on. That's it. Now, I'm kind of anal when it comes to the bolts up on top there. I don't like to shoot them on tight with an air gun. I like to get up there and actually feel it with the ratchet so I can feel that they're nice and tight. So I am going to get in there with a 15mm socket and a ratchet. Just to make sure that they're tight. All right. All right, so let me recap what we did. Okay. All right, so we tightened up our bolt here that holds the ABS sensor and the brake line out of the way. We tightened up both of these bolts here that hold the strut to the knuckle. We reattached our ABS sensor to the knuckle so that it doesn't hang out and get hit by accident. We reattached our stabilizer link and we tightened it up. Last but not least, We air gunned on those bolts up top there, the three on the ends. The one in the center, we didn't touch it because that comes tightened up from the factory. And that's it. We're all set. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to go around the other side. We're going to duplicate that on the other side, the replacement of the strut. And then we're going to go to, I'm not going to film the strut on the right side because it's just a mirror image of what I did here. But stay with me and we're going to come back and we're going to do those rear struts, which are a little bit more of a pain in the rear end because I think on this one here, you got to take the back seat out. So, all right, stay tuned. We'll be back. Hi, welcome back. Fronts are all done. We got both left and right side done. We're going to do the backs now, and we're going to replace the whole assembly in the back also. And remember, I told you I was going to show you why I was replacing the whole assembly, because the bellows and the bearing plates were actually an issue on these. I'll bring you in now. I'm going to show you what these look like. Next thing we got to do is we have to remove the back seat out of the car. And the reason you have to remove the back seat is because this is where your strut comes up in the back over here. And when you go into the trunk, you can't even see the top of the strut. So we have to take the whole back seat out of the car in order to gain access to it. If you haven't done the back seats on these before, you're going to find out that getting the rear seat cushion up is a real pain in the rear end. The first one I did, I thought I was going to break it trying to pull it apart because it was so tight. I did find a trick to it though. What you got to do is lift up the cushion until you find the pin that comes down. The pin is actually like this here. It comes around like that. I put a screwdriver, a very large screwdriver, into the center of that pin and pry up, and it pops the seat right out. If you grab it on both sides, as they tell you to do on the computer, and pull it, you're going to bend the seat or distort the seat, and you're going to have a problem trying to get it back in. I'm going to bring you in, I'll show you what I did and how I got it out. And I'll bring you in and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay. This is why I said we're going to change the entire assembly. You see that bellows is smashed up there? By the time you get the bearing plate and the bellows and the new strut, it costs more than the quick strut does. So that's why we're changing the whole assembly. To do it, not a big deal. It's similar to the front. We're going to take off the stabilizer link. We're going to disconnect our brake hose as well as the cable. We're going to remove these bolts that you see down in here, both these bolts right here. And then we're going to pull these out, and then we'll get the strut out after we disconnect it from up top in the back underneath here. So, all right, now what I was telling you about with this seat here, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it in here, but underneath here, right here, is where the seat has that little hook right there. You get in there with a screwdriver in here. I can't see it, I'm going to have to do this with, get in here with the screwdriver like this, and then you pry it, and it pops up. So let me do that, and I'll show you how it's done after I grab that phone. Okay, I hope you can see that, but we'll see. Underneath the hook, and you pull it, and it pulls out. We're going to do the same thing on that side, and then we're going to take this cushion out of the car. So we're going to take this cushion out, and then we'll come right back. Okay. Next thing we need to do is to take this seat, flip this seat down so we can get in there. Okay, I don't know how much of this you're going to be able to see, but down underneath on this side here, as well as on that side over there, there's a 12 millimeter nut or a bolt that we're going to take out. When you take this 12 millimeter out, you'll be able to get this one section of the cushion out, so you can gain access to the bolts, which are actually underneath this cushion. We're not going to remove the entire seat assembly. We're just going to remove the corner piece of it here. Or I think they call it the bolster or something like that. All right, so we'll take these off. We don't want to mess up the customer's car. You grab the unit here after you take the bolt out. You lift it up and out. Sometimes they don't come out. Sometimes they do. Now you can take the seat belt out of here if you choose to. I'm going to actually leave it. I'm going to bring you in, and I'll show you what's up inside here. But there's actually 3 bolts that hold the strut to the top here, so I'm going to bring you over here. Come on, take a walk with me. These are the 3 bolts right here that we need to take off. We're going to take those 3 out, and that'll loosen up the top part of the strut. They look like they're about 12, maybe 13 millimeter. I'm not going to bore you with removing those because you know how to unscrew a bolt. So, all right, let's continue with the work we need to do down in this area here. I do want to point out that the bolts up on the top here, we took the 2 of them out, and then we just left the 1 on there just to hold it for now. And now we're going to continue underneath the bottom. Now, obviously, I did do the same thing on the other side there. So, you know, we're going to lift the car up and we'll continue on the bottom. Okay, I'm hoping you can see all right in here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to spray everything with some penetrating oil, just so it comes off without an issue. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to take this bolt out right here. That's extremely rusty, so we'll see how that goes. That's a 14 millimeter, just so you know. I'm going to try to hit it with the air gun to loosen it up first, and then I'm going to take it out by hand probably, so we'll see. Now, the whole thing is spinning, so that's what I need to do. So what we're going to do, we do the same thing we did up in the front, we're going to do in the back. Put our wrench on it, 14 millimeter. We're going to take our socket, which is 5 millimeter, and we're going to put it in this hole right here. Very, very rusty, just so you know. So we'll see if we can save this one too. We'll put that in there like that, and then we're going to tap it in as far as we can. Now remember, we're turning the wrench. We're not turning the ratchet. The ratchet is just to hold it stationary while we try to turn it. And actually, it feels like it will be coming off. But we'll see. Well, I can say this now, I did not expect that to come off. I kind of thought that I was going to be changing this stabilizer link too. Right, we'll take that bolt off, and we're going to keep that bolt because we're going to need to use it again later. All right, then we're going to remove this bolt in the back here. That's probably about a 12 millimeter. Considering how much rust was on there, I'm very surprised that all this is coming apart the way it is. Actually, I shouldn't say that until we get the whole thing apart, right? Because I know we're going to have trouble with something. We'll just relocate this off to the side. We have one more bolt in the back. It looks like a 10 millimeter that holds the ABS cable away. Just going to put that off to the side now. And now we're going to egg on those two studs. There'd be two, we're going to egg on these two bolts off that goes through the knuckle to the lower part of the strut. And just so you know, they're 19 millimeter. We're going to take the low one off first. We're going to egg on the nuts off. Then we're going to hold it at the back with a wrench so that the whole thing doesn't spin. Same thing on the upper. Now you notice I left the bolt in there, right? The reason you do that, you want to be able to control when this comes down. You don't want it just to come slamming down to the ground. All right, now we're going to take the bolts out. You may have to lift up on the suspension a little bit. Very rusty there. So we're going to try to loosen them up by the air in the back. Okay. Just going to tap these out with the drift. We'll do the same thing with this one up here. I'm going to try to lift it up and push it in a little bit. We're going to have to tap this one out a little bit too. Okay, and we can take our drift out, and now the strut is loose. We'll let the suspension hang a little bit. And now remember what I told you about that bolt up in the top right there? We loosened up that bolt, and now we can take it out by hand. Just reach in the inside, and you can unscrew it by hand. And then we'll take the strut out of the car, and as you can see, it's pretty messed up. All right, let me grab the new struts, and we'll come right back. Now, I'm sure I don't have to tell you this. Always match them up to make sure you have the correct strut going back in the correct location. And we're going to just reverse the procedure now. We put the strut back up to the top. And now we use the new nuts. The new nuts that is provided with the strut. Don't use the old ones. Use new ones because these are self-locking. We're going to catch all 4 of them up top by hand. All right, now this thread is suspended. We're going to put these back in over here. Sometimes they're a little rough to get back in there. But what I do is get in here with a drift like this, line it up. And then once it's lined up, then you can put your bolt in. Bottom bolt's in. Just going to catch the nut temporarily for now. And then we're going to do the top one, which is a little bit more difficult. We're going to push this in. Put the drift in through the side here. And you can pull it to line it up. I do never seize the bolt. Goes in a little bit easier, of course. Now, if your brake line is in the way, you can move the caliper. I'm not going to. It's a little bit tight going in, so I am going to use air to shoot it in there. Sorry about that noise. We're going to catch the other nut on this side here, and now we can tighten those up. All right. Remember, you're holding the 19 millimeter on this side, and you shoot it on with air on the other. Same thing on the bottom. Make sure that you don't pinch your ABS cables like these. You make sure that you're clearing the nut and it's not hitting something and crushing it down. Otherwise, you'll be changing the ABS sensor. Okay. Both bolts through the strut are now tight. We're going to put our 10 millimeter bolt back in the back. Right. And we're going to take our 12 millimeter bolt that holds the brake line out of the way. And we're going to put that back in. Catch it by hand first. Once you caught it by hand, you can turn it in, and then we'll tighten it up with the ratchet. Nice and tight. And last but not least, we're going to put our stabilizer link back through. Put some never seize on it. Takes a second. This saves you a lot of headaches if that thing strips out. Put it through the strut. And screw the nut on as far as you can by hand. And now we're just going to hold it again with that 5 millimeter. And then we're going to tighten up with the wrench. We're going to tighten it. Now I am going to tighten this up with the gun, just to make sure it's tight. If you don't have an air gun, you can just tighten it up by hand. Okay, that's nice and tight. Okay. And I'm going to bring you in here, show you what we're up to. Okay. Both these bolts here through the bottom of the knuckle are tight. The 12 millimeter that holds the cable, the brake line in place is tight. The 10 millimeter back here that holds the ABS is tight. The stabilizer link is also tight. And that's it. We're pretty much all set right down up here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up inside the car and we're going to tighten up those other bolts right there. And that's it. We're out the door. Obviously, we're going to do the other side too. And that's it. We'll wrap it up and on to the next one. We do have to mount and balance the tires. And then it's off to the alignment shop. And that's it. It'll be all done. All right. If you have any questions or any concerns or any comments, especially about this back seat, I know you're going to have trouble getting that back seat out. It's a pain in the rear end. Obviously, to put it back in, I do use a little bit of grease on here. It slides in nice and easy. We are going to put these pieces back on. They just slide back up in there just the exact same way you took them out. Put the back seat in, out the door. All right. Any questions or any comments, or you have any information you need from me, send me an email. I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody about anything. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.